Let me tell you something real. Most people don't know who they are until life breaks them. Not until the money dries up. Not until the fake friends fade out. Not until they look around and there's no applause, no likes, no backup plan. That's when it gets real. That's when you find out what your foundation actually is. When a man hits rock bottom, the world tends to look at it like a tragedy, like it's the end of the story, like the moment you lose your job, your reputation, your house, your relationships, you're done. But the truth is, that's not the end. That's the beginning. That's where clarity starts. That's where the noise disappears and real identity begins to form. When everything you leaned on gets stripped away, what's left is what's real. And that's when you realize how much of your life was built on things that couldn't hold your weight. See, most people build their lives on scaffolding, on things that look stable but aren't meant to support the full weight of who they are. Money, it's a tool, not a foundation. Relationships, they're beautiful, but they can't carry your soul. Status, followers, degrees, titles, none of it can stand when life applies pressure, and life will apply pressure, that's guaranteed. So what happens when all those things collapse? You panic, right, that's what we're trained to do. We're told that losing things equals losing ourselves, but here's the real truth. When you lose everything, you get the clearest picture of who you are without the performance. You're not pretending anymore. You're not curating your identity anymore. You're not trying to impress people anymore. Because let's be honest, most of them disappeared when the everything did. That's the moment where you stop playing defense and start seeing what you're really made of. You see what's been driving you. You find out if your ambition was rooted in purpose or insecurity. You find out if your confidence was real or just dressed up in comfort and convenience. You find out if your values were just nice ideas or actual convictions. And it's in that moment, when it's all gone, when it's silent, when it's lonely, that you're finally able to see what was distracting you from truth. You realize how much of your energy was being spent maintaining a life that wasn't even yours. A life built for approval, a life built for applause, a life built for comfort instead of calling. But when it all burns down, you're left with the foundation, and for some people, that's where they realize they didn't have one. But for others, that's where they discover God was the foundation all along. They just never slowed down enough to notice. When you've got nothing left, and you still wake up with breath in your lungs, you realize that life itself is a gift, not a guarantee. That's clarity. That's where your real life starts. Not from addition, but from subtraction. It's uncomfortable, sure, painful, definitely, but it's also clean, it's honest. You don't have to lie to yourself anymore. You don't have to fake strength. You get to look yourself in the mirror and say, this is who I am, with nothing to hide behind. And once you've seen that version of yourself, raw, stripped down, vulnerable, you're not scared of anything anymore. Because you know what it means to have nothing, and still have enough. So don't fear rock bottom, respect it. It's not the enemy, it's the introduction. It's where men become who they were actually meant to be. When a man has nothing left but God, he finally learns that God is not just a belief or a Sunday ritual. He's the ground that never shifts, the truth that never fades, and the source that never runs out. And from that place of loss, something eternal begins to grow. One of the hardest lessons a man will ever learn is that he was never in control, not of the outcomes, not of the timing, not of the people who left or the situations that fell apart. And it's funny, because we're raised to believe that the goal is to take charge, be the boss, call the shots, hustle until everything bends to your will. But that's an illusion. It works for a while, sure. When things go your way, when people say yes, when doors open and success seems to line up like a checklist, it's easy to believe you've got it handled. You start thinking, I've got this, like life is a machine and you're the one pulling the levers. But life isn't a machine, it's a storm. It's unpredictable, complex, chaotic, and at some point, something happens that reminds you just how small you really are. Maybe it's a health crisis, maybe it's losing a job you thought was secure. Maybe it's a divorce you never saw coming, or a betrayal that leaves you breathless. Whatever it is, it brings you to your knees, and in that moment, the illusion shatters. You realize that all the planning in the world couldn't have stopped this. All the confidence, all the hustle, all the networking, all the books. You still ended up here, and that's when it clicks. Control was never the goal. Alignment was. There's a strange kind of peace that shows up when the illusion of control finally dies. It hurts, no doubt, but it also frees you. You stop trying to play God and start trying to hear him. You stop pretending you have all the answers and finally become open to the answers that were always there. You just couldn't hear them over your own ego. Because that's what the illusion of control does. It drowns out wisdom. It silences humility. It makes you believe that surrender is weakness, when in reality, surrender is the starting point of real strength. See, when everything falls apart, what actually falls away is the pressure to pretend. You no longer have to perform for the world. You no longer have to obsess over every detail, every outcome, every reaction. You stop micromanaging your life and start trusting the process. And more importantly, you start trusting the one who is in control. You begin to understand that surrender isn't giving up, it's giving over. It's placing what you can't control in the hands of the one who already sees the full picture. That shift from striving to surrender is one of the most powerful transformations a man can go through. Because once you realize you were never steering the ship to begin with, you stop fighting the waves and start learning how to ride them. You begin to flow with the current instead of exhausting yourself trying to reverse it. And no, it doesn't mean you stop working hard or making decisions, but it does mean your foundation changes. You move from anxiety to assurance, from panic to peace, from I've got to make this happen, to I'm going to show up, but I trust that God is already at work. And that shift, it changes everything. Your relationships get healthier because you're no longer trying to control people. Your work gets better because it's no longer driven by fear. Your soul gets lighter because you're no longer carrying weight that was never yours to hold. So yes, the illusion of control is the first thing to go when life breaks down, but don't mourn it, celebrate it, because in losing control, you gain clarity. In surrendering, you find strength, and when you stop playing God, you finally get to meet him, not as a concept, but as a companion. Not at the top of your game, but at the bottom of your soul. And that's where real life begins. When everything falls apart, when the systems fail, when the plans collapse, when your own strength runs out. Faith in God doesn't just become important, it becomes essential. Not optional, not inspirational, essential, and that's where so many people get it twisted. They treat faith like a parachute, something you only pull when you're falling, something you keep in the background just in case. But real faith doesn't sit quietly in the corner of your life. Real faith becomes the framework, the structure, the oxygen, and when you've lost everything else, you begin to understand that faith isn't your last resort. It's the only thing that was holding you up to begin with. It's easy to say you trust God when the paycheck clears, when the house is warm, when the plan is working, but that's not trust. That's convenience. That's comfort disguised as belief. Real faith is proven when all those things vanish. When there's no logic left, no safety net, no backup plan, when your hands are empty and your options are gone, and you still choose to say, I believe, that's not weakness, that's power. That's the kind of faith that can't be faked. And the deeper truth is this: when faith becomes the core strategy, not the fallback, you become unshakable, not because you're numb, not because you're in denial, but because you've anchored yourself in something eternal. Something not tied to your performance or your circumstances, something not affected by the market, the metrics, or the mood of the people around you. Faith in God grounds you when nothing else will. And once you really understand that, everything else starts to shift. You stop looking at uncertainty like a threat and start seeing it as a space where God works best. You stop needing guarantees. You stop worshiping control. You stop chasing security in places that can't give it. Instead, you start showing up with a different kind of confidence, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, steady kind that says, I don't know how, but I know who. That kind of mindset doesn't just survive storms, it walks straight into them with peace. People might call that irrational, but let's be honest, logic didn't save you, systems didn't save you, your own strength didn't save you. You've tried doing it on your own and it left you empty. That's why it's not foolish to put your faith in God. It's wise. It's the most practical thing you can do, because at the end of the day, everything else can and will break. God doesn't, and it's in that breaking, when the job's gone, when the people leave, when the effort feels wasted, that you realize something profound. God was never waiting for you to be perfect or powerful or prepared. He was just waiting for you to stop pretending you could do it all on your own. He was waiting for the moment you ran out of strength, not so he could shame you, but so he could carry you. That's not religion. That's relationship. That's the real foundation. So if you're in that place where everything's falling apart, don't panic. Don't spiral. Recognize what's happening. You're being positioned to finally build on something real. And no, faith won't magically erase all the pain, all the consequences, all the chaos. But it will give you something deeper than relief. It will give you resilience. It will give you direction. It will remind you that you're not alone, even when it feels like the world went silent. When everything else fails and God is all you have, you begin to realize He was all you ever needed. That's not poetic, that's practical, because faith doesn't just hold you up. It builds you into someone who can walk through fire without getting burned. Purpose is rarely born in comfort. In fact, most of the time, purpose emerges out of the furnace of loss, pain, and uncertainty. When everything you've known disappears, the job, the relationship, the security, you enter a space that's uncomfortable, disorienting, and often lonely. But it's in that very space, in the silence and the shadows, that the seeds of something much greater begin to grow. It's easy to forget this when you're in the middle of a crisis, overwhelmed by the weight of what's been lost. But those moments aren't the end of your story. They are the beginning of a deeper, more meaningful chapter. You see, purpose doesn't just drop out of the sky like a sudden idea or a bolt of lightning. It's forged in the fire, it's shaped by struggle, it's revealed when you have nothing left but God, because that's when your heart finally has the space to listen. The noise of the world falls away, the distractions, the expectations, the pressure to perform, and suddenly there's only silence. And in that silence, purpose begins to whisper. When you're stripped of everything familiar, you start asking the real questions, not what do I want, but who am I, and why am I here? Those questions don't come from convenience or comfort. They come from desperation and honesty, and those questions lead you to your purpose. It's important to understand that God doesn't just meet you in the valley of loss. He builds you there. That valley isn't a pit designed to bury you. It's fertile ground prepared to grow you. And just like a seed has to be buried in dirt before it can sprout, you have to go through those hard, dark moments before you can rise. The process is painful and slow, but it's necessary. It's where your character is developed, your faith is tested, and your vision is refined. Purpose born in loss is also purpose that is deeply rooted. It's not fragile or fleeting. It's not something that can be shaken by circumstances or setbacks, because it comes from a place deeper than success or failure. It's tied to your identity, not your accomplishments. When you find purpose in the furnace of loss, you're no longer dependent on external validation. You don't need applause or recognition to keep going, because you know your worth and your calling come from God alone. This kind of purpose gives you resilience. It makes you someone who can stand strong in the face of adversity, who can keep moving forward even when the path is unclear. It helps you see beyond the immediate pain and losses to the bigger picture, the legacy, the impact, the reason your story matters. It gives you a reason to get up every morning even when you have no idea how the day will unfold. Many people never discover this because they run from pain or try to avoid the hard questions. They keep chasing comfort and security, hoping those things will fill the emptiness inside. But comfort is temporary, and security can be taken away in an instant. Purpose that is born in the furnace of loss, however, is eternal. It shapes who you are and what you do in ways that no easy season ever could. So if you're going through a season where everything seems lost, don't give up. Don't look at the silence and the emptiness as a sign of defeat. Look at it as the soil where your purpose is taking root. Trust that God is working, even when you can't see it. Know that He's not just restoring what was broken. He's creating something new and better. This is the moment where you decide who you're going to be. Will you be someone who lets loss define you, or someone who lets loss refine you? Will you sink into bitterness and regret, or will you rise with clarity and strength? Purpose is waiting on the other side of that choice, and when you find it, you'll realize that all the pain and loss weren't wasted. They were preparing you for something greater than you ever imagined. When a man has nothing left but God, it may look like he's lost everything, but the reality is far different. In losing what was temporary, he uncovers what is eternal. In surrendering control, he gains true freedom. In choosing faith, he taps into an unshakable strength, and in the furnace of loss, he finds a purpose that no success or comfort could ever reveal. This is not a story of defeat, it's a story of breakthrough. When everything falls away, what remains is the foundation on which real life is built. It's not about rebuilding the old, it's about becoming new. It's not about holding on to what's gone, it's about embracing what's coming. It's about knowing deep in your soul that when God is all you've got, you already have everything you need. So if you find yourself at that place, empty, broken, with nothing but faith, don't despair. Stand tall, because in that moment you are standing on the edge of your greatest transformation. Your lowest point is the launching pad for your highest calling, and with God as your foundation, you are unstoppable. This is your time to rise.